Okay, think about Aladdin. You know, the magic lamp, the flying carpet, ancient cities. It really feels like a story that's been around forever, right? Part of timeless Middle Eastern folklore.
Absolutely, that's the common perception.
But what if I told you that the story we all know and love, the one that's, captivated millions, actually has a much more surprising and frankly much more recent origin?
Mm,
Not in some ancient bazaar, but right in 18th century Paris.
quite a twist, isn't it?
It really is. So today we're doing a deep dive into the true origins of Aladdin. We're going to unpack how this incredibly famous tale, far from being this untouched ancient myth, really came together in the intellectual hub of Paris in the 1700s.
Yeah, fascinating intersection of cultures.
And our journey actually starts, maybe unexpectedly, at a very modern building in Paris on the left bank of the Seine, the Institut du Monde Arabe.
A striking build.
Totally. With its geometric facade. Well, this place dedicated to Arab world scholarship kind of became central to uncovering the real story behind some of these tales we thought we knew so well.
A center of knowledge helping unravel a literary mystery.
Exactly. So, our mission today is clear. Peel back the layers of Aladdin, find the absolutely pivotal but uncredited person behind its popularization, and trace its unique path from the Middle East to Europe.
And it's a fantastic example, really, of how narratives we take for granted can be completely upended by new research. I mean, for centuries, the origins of some key stories in 1001 Nights, or Arabian Nights as many know it, they were just wrapped in mystery.
People just assumed they were ancient.
Pretty much. Assumed ancient Arabic folklore. But the reality, as we'll get into, is, well, a lot more complicated and definitely more recent.
Okay, so let's dig in. Where does this Parisian connection start? It seems to begin with Antoine Galland, right? A French scholar, early 18th century.
That's the key figure initially. Galland introduced 1001 Nights to Europe with his French translation, and it was a sensation. Huge impact.
An immediate bestseller, basically.
You could say that. But here's the crucial point. While Galland absolutely popularized the collection, some of the most famous stories weren't actually in the original Arabic manuscripts he was working from.
Wait, really? Which ones?
Well, the big ones. Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, even Sinbad the Sailor. To some extent, its inclusion was complicated. Literary scholars often call these the orphan stories,
Orphan stories, why?
because no original Arabic sources for them have ever been found. None.
Hmm.
And this has been a major puzzle for academics for, well, over a century now. They just didn't seem to belong.
Wow, okay, so if they weren't in the original manuscripts Galland had, where on earth did they come from? How did they end up in his famous translation?
Now that leads us to a fascinating individual, a young man named Hana Diab.
Hana Diab. Okay, tell us about him.
He was born in Aleppo, Syria, back in 1688. He was half-orphaned, worked at a French trading post. And apparently, at 18, he was getting a bit fed up with his dominant older brother.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. So he decided, basically, to see the world. He wanted adventure, opportunity.
And that's when he crosses paths with someone important.
Exactly. He meets Paul Lucas. Lucas was a Frenchman, an antiquarian, traveling the East for the French Royal Academy, collecting artifacts and curiosities.
Okay.
And Lucas needed help. He needed someone who could translate, guide, negotiate. A real jack of all trades. And he saw that in Diab.
Because Diab had skills.
Impressive skills, yes.
Yeah.
He spoke Arabic, Turkish, French, Italian, even some Provençal. He was the perfect intermediary for Lucas. So Lucas hired him.
And they set off.
They did. What a journey. Through Cyprus, Egypt, Tunisia, then up through Italy, Marseille, finally landing in Paris in the autumn of 1708.
Imagine arriving in Paris then from Aleppo, the sheer difference.
Oh, absolutely. Diab was apparently amazed. They lived near Notre Dame, and he wrote about hearing the church bells, something totally new to him. No bells like that in Aleppo.
Right.
And he was meticulous. As a Maronite Christian, he was really interested in religion, but also monuments, food. He kept detailed notes. He wrote about the big hospitals, Hotel Dieu, La Salpêtrière.
And he was there during that infamous winter.
Yes, the winter of 1709, the coldest anyone could remember. He wrote about that too. And of course, the incredible grandeur of Versailles. He was taking it all in.
Did he meet the king?
He did. He and Paul Lucas went to Versailles to present King Louis XIV with some desert gerbolas. You know, those little hopping rodents.
Ah, I wonder what the king thought of those.
The court was apparently quite taken with them. But reports suggest Diab himself, with his Big mustache, turban, and caftan really drew a lot of attention. He was an exotic sight.
Okay, so Diab is in Paris. He's seen the sights. He's met the king.
Hmm.
How does he connect with Galland and the knights?
Through Paul Lucas. Lucas introduced Diab to Antoine Galland. Galland at this point was teaching Arabic at the College de France and was, right in the middle of translating the 1001 Nights.
Ah, the connection is made.
Precisely. And this is where we rely on Diab's own account, written much later, in 1763, as part of his life story.
What did he say?
He wrote that Galland asked him for help, that Galland felt stories were missing from the collection. And so Diab told him fairy tales. He wasn't specific about exactly which tales in this passage, but he said he provided them.
He filled in the gaps, essentially.
That's what he implies. He also mentioned meeting Galland multiple times, specifically to decipher the manuscript together. It suggests a real collaboration.
A collaboration, but one that wasn't acknowledged.
Exactly. That's the incredible part. Hannah Diab's name appears nowhere in Galland's published work. Nowhere at all.
So Galland just took the stories.
Well, it seems Diab's contribution wasn't credited. It was only when Diab's own autobiography surfaced, decades later, that people could piece together his absolutely crucial role in shaping the tales of the 1001 Nights as the West came to know them. For centuries, he was invisible.
That's astonishing. So let's go back to those orphan stories. Aladdin, Ali Baba.
Right. This discovery of Diab's role sheds new light on them. Many fairy tale experts look at the structure of those specific stories, the plot twists, the pacing, and they find it feels very European.
European, not Middle Eastern.
Particularly Mediterranean, some argue. The narrative style just doesn't quite align with the other verified Arabic tales in the collection. This has led to a really compelling theory.
Which is?
That perhaps Diab didn't just recount existing Syrian tales. Perhaps he actually invented these specific stories, or at least significantly adapted them, blending Middle Eastern settings with narrative structures he picked up, or that just resonated more with European sensibilities, including Aladdin and Ali Baba.
So the very reason these stories became so popular in Europe might be because, under the surface, they were already speaking a kind of narrative language Europeans understood.
That's a strong possibility. Set in the exotic Orient, yes, but told with a rhythm, a structure that felt familiar, maybe even comfortable, to Galland's audience. A narrative style that was perhaps, paradoxically, anything but Eastern in some ways.
Mind blown. Okay, but it gets even more specific, doesn't it? There's a connection to Diab's own life.
This is where it gets really fascinating. In 2015, there was a new French translation of Hannah Diab's travelogue, the detailed account he kept of his journey and experiences, which had been preserved in the Vatican Library.
And this translation revealed
Some truly striking parallels, almost an autobiographical echo between Diab's life and the story of Aladdin.
like what? Give us examples.
Okay, well, first off, both Diab and Aladdin lost their fathers when they were young.
Okay, interesting.
Both were then sort of taken under the wing of an uncle figure from a distant land. For Diab, this is Paul Lucas, the Frenchman who hired him. For Aladdin, it's the Maghrebian magician. And this uncle figure effectively becomes a teacher.
Wow, that's quite direct. What else?
Get this. When Diab and Lucas were traveling out of Aleppo, Diab actually wrote about discovering something intriguing. He described finding a deep cavity behind a boulder.
No way. Like the magic cave.
Sounds remarkably like it, doesn't it? And guess what he says they found inside? Among other things, a precious lamp.
Okay, that's just uncanny. A precious lamp.
A precious lamp.
Yep.
And one more. After his whole European adventure, Diab eventually returned to Aleppo in autumn 1709. And what profession did he take up?
Let me guess. Something involving riches.
He became a cloth merchant, just like Aladdin at the end of his story, who uses his wealth to set himself up respectably.
That's incredible. It really suggests he wasn't just telling random tales. He was weaving his own life, his own observations and experiences into the stories he gave Galland.
It strongly points that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He took his own remarkable journey and essentially turned aspects of it into this story that became a global phenomenon.
And what a phenomenon. I mean, think about Aladdin's reach today. Opera, ballet, countless films, Disney, obviously TV shows. It's utterly embedded in global culture.
Colossal success, absolutely undeniable, which makes the central irony even more potent.
Which is?
A story achieving this monumental worldwide fame. Yet for centuries, the Syrian storyteller, Hannah Diab, the young man from Aleppo, whose experiences seem so deeply woven into its fabric, he wasn't mentioned, not even once in the publication history. His contribution was effectively erased until modern scholarship brought him back into the picture.
So let's just recap this for everyone listening. Aladdin, the story we thought was ancient folklore. It's actually this complex, vibrant tapestry woven from cultural exchange between Syria and France, definitely shaped by the personal life of Hannah Diad and born out of this incredible, forgotten journey from Aleppo to Paris.
It's a much richer, more complex origin story than the fairy tale itself.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it?
I think it does. It makes you wonder how many other beloved stories or famous works of art, or maybe even scientific breakthroughs, might have these hidden architects, these uncredited contributors whose voices and experiences shape the final product, but whose names just got lost along the way.
Yeah. What does that tell us about how we remember history, about creativity, about whose stories get told and who gets the credit?
Exactly. It touches on cultural transmission, historical recognition, really fundamental questions.
It's definitely something to think about. It really highlights the power of individual voices, even when they're hidden, and the surprising, sometimes invisible paths that knowledge travels before it becomes something everyone thinks they know.
A reminder that digging deeper often reveals a completely different landscape.
A perfect place to end our deep dive for today. Thanks for helping us uncover that hidden history.
My pleasure. It's a story worth telling.